Andrew Jackson was born on March 15, 1767, and died in 1845. He had two older brothers, Hugh and Robert. His father died shortly after Andrew's birth. Andrew was a quick-tempered kid, and he was always willing to pick a fight with peers who pestered him. He always defended the smaller kids, and taught them things like shooting, fishing, racing, and wrestling. His mother wanted him to be a Presbyterian minister, so he had what education there was in Waxhaw. He showed little interest in his studies. This was interrupted by the American Revolution coming into Waxhaw. Andrew was 13 when the British had a bloody victory over Waxhaw militia in 1780. Him and his brother Robert helped tend the wounded. Shortly after this, they joined the war at the Battle of Hanging Rock, August 1780. At first they were just messengers, nowhere they could really get hurt, but a year later they helped fight skirmishes against the British. During spring 1781, they were captured by British soldiers. They stayed strong through their capture. A British soldier told Andrew to clean his dirty boot. Andrew refused, and the soldier swung at him with his sword. He brought up his hand to block it from hitting his head. He had scars there for the rest of his life. Their wounds were not treated as they were marched to be moved to a prison in Camden, South Carolina. They had poor living conditions and little food and water. Soon after, Robert and Andrew both caught smallpox. In April 1781, their mother Elizabeth was able to get them released and traded some British soldiers held captive. A few days later, Elizabeth's nursing skills were able to save Andrew from the disease, but Robert perished. Elizabeth soon went to Charlestown to nurse colonial troops captured in British ships. She died of ship fever, and Andrew never knew where her mother was buried. Andrew looked up to his mother's bravery and devotion. This helped guide him through his life. At 16, Jackson moved to Charleston, one of the more rich cities of the U.S. at the time. After a year living on his grandfather's inheritance, he decided to become a lawyer. He studied law in Salisbury for 2 years, and was accepted into a North Carolina bar in 1787. He didn't like the city life and wanted a more rural setting. He moved to Nashville and earned a good reputation as a lawyer. Andrew lived in a Donaldson's home for a while, where he met his wife-to-be Rachel Donaldson Robards. Jackson had to remarry Rachel because she had never been completely divorced from her other husband. During his presidency, others brought this topic up against him, for he overlooked legal paperwork. They had a baby named Andrew Jackson Jr. He also owned a plantation called Hermitage, one of the first users of the cotton gin, which made his plantation flourish. Jackson became a congressman in December 1796. He was nicknamed the Man from the West. Philadelphia was surprised by the bold spirit of Jackson. His intense and passionate speeches showed how he believed in his principles. Jackson believed in democratic ideas, the ideas of individual freedoms and state rights. In 1787, Tennessee appointed Jackson as a spokesman from the West, representing all of the newer states. Politics annoyed him with problems from the plantation and his hatred of Eastern banks. He didn't like the bank-controlled loans. In 1798, he resigned from the Senate to be a judge of the Superior Court of Tennessee. He gave up his political life in 1804. In 1802, Jackson was appointed as Major General in the Tennessee militia. Jackson gave great service to the War of 1812. He enlisted 50,000 soldiers into his militia. He was not a great military strategist, but he had a bold determination of victory. He was ordered to suppress the Creek uprisings. Jackson led his men into multiple attacks during the winter, although he had a lack of supplies. There were several mutinies because of the supply lack. He had to prevent a third one by shooting a rebellious soldier. After several little battles, during the Battle of Horseshoe Bend, Alabama, on March 27, 1814, Jackson wiped out all the Creek Indians. The soldiers said he was tough as hickory, giving him the name Old Hickory. This was a turning point in Jackson's life. He was made a Major General in the U.S. Army. In November 1814, Jackson was appointed to defend New Orleans from a British attack. He built defenses and recruited more riflemen from Tennessee and Kentucky. He also recruited anyone he could find. Free blacks and pirates were included. On January 8, 1815, the British troops charged. The battle gave the U.S. few casualties and over 2,000 for the British casualties. This became known as the Battle of New Orleans. The battle was a mistake, however, for the Treaty of Ghent was signed on December 24, 1814. The news did not reach Jackson in time. Although Jackson's battle did not contribute to the outcome of the war, it boosted the U.S. morale greatly. Jackson was considered a national hero. He went back to his private life in 1821, but Tennessee appointed him to the Senate again in 1823. Tennessee elected Jackson for president. Andrew Jackson had 99 votes, John Quincy Adams had 84 votes, Joel Crawford had 41 votes, and Henry Clay had 37 votes. Since no one had a majority of votes, it was up to the House of Representatives. Jackson lost, however, and Adams became the 6th president. This is because the House of Representatives only vote over the top 3 candidates. Clay gave his support to Adams, and Clay became the Secretary of State. Jackson blamed Adams for making a corrupt bargain. Andrew Jackson beat John Quincy Adams in the election of 1828. The electoral votes were 178 to 83. Jackson's votes mostly came from the South and the West. His supporters in Nashville kept attacking Adams about the corrupt bargain that he was accused of. Although supporters of Adams referred to how Jackson married Rachel, without legal papers being final. This led to Rachel, distraught at this, dying to a heart attack. Jackson blamed her death on treachery of his political opponents. On March 4, 1829, Jackson became the president. Most people cheered and howled for Old Hickory. Not everyone was happy about his presidency. Thomas Jefferson disliked Andrew Jackson as president. Jefferson said, "I feel very much alarmed at the prospect of seeing General Jackson as president. He is one of the most unfit men I know for the place. He is a dangerous man." In 1830, Jackson signed the Indian Removal Act forcing all Indians east of the Mississippi to leave. In winter and fall of 1838 to 1839, Indians were forced to walk west in cold conditions. This led to many illnesses and thousands of deaths. This was called the Trail of Tears. Indian tribes revolted, but to no avail. The Sacs and Fox tribes were killed, and the Blackhawks were captured during the Black Hawk War in 1832. Another tribe decided to revolt. This led to the Second Seminole War, which lasted from 1835 to 1842. There were 2,000 U.S. casualties until the Seminole chief Osceola was captured. This was a truce called, and most of the Indians agreed to move west. The Democratic Party was based on Jefferson's principles. Jefferson led the country of hard-handed leadership and strengthened the country by making new policies.